Well, yeah, that's right. What site was that you did there? She's going to get a couple of hours. And I'll move no, you'll do it here.
Carrie will bring you something.
Oh, that's your business. Oh, yeah, so what kind of, are they just like
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here, both live and virtually today. We're so excited to spend an hour with you this afternoon. Let's see, we have a few special guests here, some elected officials. If I can introduce those. We have our Clerk Auditor, Kim Hafen, and he will be one of our speakers this afternoon. Let's see. And County Attorney Eric Clark and County Commissioner Gil Almquist. They're all here today, so we're glad to have them here with us today. We're just going to move forward quickly today so that we can hear as much as possible from our speakers. So first of all, I want to remind you that our membership drive is ongoing, and right now with COVID and with how we've had to do virtual and live, I want to remind you that Michonne and Patty, let's see, do I see Patty? Patty, they're going to try to keep track of you and track you down if you still need to renew for 2021. So just be watching for them. And if you are with us virtually, just remember that you can always go to our website, www.washingtoncountyrepublicanwomen.com, and you can renew your membership there as well. Let's see. So today we will have a prayer by Sharon Simmons, and then Yvonne Wall will give us our Americanism and the pledge, and then we're going to skip the new member introduction that you see on your agenda because they are not here, and we'll move straight to Judy Houston, who will introduce our speakers in our program, and then we'll be so excited to hear from Kim Hafen and Susan Lewis. So, Sharon.
Let us pray. Dear Father in heaven, we thank thee for the ability to be gathered here today and for those who are joining us virtually. We thank thee for our new members and our returning members. We're thankful for our speakers, Kim Hafen and Susan Lewis, for their time and willingness to be with us today. We're grateful for the COVID-19 vaccine availability in our county and thankful many have been vaccinated thus far. We thank thee for our host, the Abbey Inn, which has supported us for many years, and we are thankful for our caterer and the wonderful meal they provide that nourishes us. Father, we ask for thy blessing for our speakers, Kim and Susan, in their service to our county. We ask for thy blessing for the Abbey Inn and our caterer who work in service of others. And we ask for thy blessing for those who have contracted COVID-19 and for those who take care of them. Father, we ask for thy blessing for our dear friend Jennifer Nelson, who's been unable to see her husband Larry, who is battling serious illness, that they may feel our prayers, love, caring, and strength for them and their family during this difficult time. We humbly beseech these blessings, Father, in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
In 1976, we celebrated the bicentennial, and during that year, President Ford decided that it would be very appropriate to have Black History Month and designated February to be the Black History Month. And it has been celebrated, rightly so, ever since then, and we're so grateful. In celebration of Black History Month, Sharon Simmons, who just offered our prayer, and Kristen Clark both submitted beautiful articles for our newsletter about Black history. I encourage you to read those because they're excellent articles. Sharon spoke about the Blacks and how they contributed to the war effort, whether it was the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, World War I, World War II, how they all played a very vital role in our country's freedom, and we're grateful. It's also been said that the reason why we celebrate Black History Month in February is because that's the birthday of Abraham Lincoln, as well as Frederick Douglass. They were contemporaries of each other. Abraham Lincoln was just 10 years older than him, and of course they were both fighting for the freedom of slaves and advocates for that. But in truth, Frederick Douglass never knew his birthday because he was a slave, because he was born in that situation where they didn't keep track of things, where they didn't care, they didn't have records. He didn't know what his birthday was. He just kind of had to estimate, and based on hearsay and keeping track of the years himself. But somewhere along the line, somebody decided to say, February is going to be your birthday, Frederick. And so that is in part why it has been chosen February as Black History Month. Frederick was also, as you know, a very self-made man. He was one of our nation's foremost intellectuals and is probably one of the most celebrated Black men in the history of the United States, along with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Sorry about that. They both thought that the Constitution was a glorious document. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and that we're endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Those are very sacred, glorious words indeed. So in Reverend King's address, I Have a Dream speech, he said, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by their color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And that is certainly our desire. As we pledge allegiance today to our magnificent flag, it's our belief and it's our hope that we truly indeed will be one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please raise and we'll say the pledge. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm very happy to be back. It's been a long time since I've seen all your beautiful faces. It's fun to be in person here. So I just got over COVID, so don't be afraid of me. Anyway, I'm just here. Cheryl Snow is a normal person that would be up here, and she's up with her husband at the Capitol. She's keeping tabs on everything up there. So I just want to introduce our speakers. Of course, we're talking today about our election process, and that has been a huge issue in this country, very divisive. And so I'm really happy to have this meeting so we can be assured here in Washington County that our vote is being counted and it's being protected. And so that's why we've invited Susan and Kim here. And so I'm very happy with that. Good job. Anyway, I'll start out with ladies first. So Susan Lewis I had to find out her official title. It's like a mile long. Anyway, Chief Deputy Clerk Auditor at Washington County. Is that good? Okay. Anyway, we have like locals here. I think Kim Ensign both grew up here, right?
Griffin Cedar, but still Southern Utah.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Southern Utah, yeah. So anyway, her and her husband graduated from Southern Utah University. They have 4 children, 5 grandchildren, and they're looking for more. Right? So after her kids grew up, she went back to work and she spent 10 years keeping financial records at the city level. And now she's on her 5th year doing this job I just told you. It's actually accounting and auditing. So she's been very active in our Republican Party. She was a precinct chair, a county and state delegate, and right now she's the treasurer for our party, the Washington County Republican Party. She said it's her 3rd year in WCRW. We're very happy, and she enjoys her association with all of us. I mean, who wouldn't, right? So anyway, and now we have Kim Hafen. Where did you go? It's over there. Oh. Okay, sorry. Anyway, he's also a local, and he this is his 12th anniversary as the Washington County Clerk Auditor. And he used to work at Moore Business Forum for almost 20 years, and as the controller at the Spectrum, just over 10 years. He's a Washington County original, and he's only lived outside the county for school. And his wife Becky is the same. They're going to celebrate their 40th wedding anniversary on Sunday.
45th.
45th. Oh, I'm sorry.
Long-suffering patient.
Okay. Thank you, and congratulations.
Thanks.
We just made 50, so I have a few years. Anyway, they have 5 children and 15 grandchildren, and 1 more on the way. So good for you. Most days, I have to read this to you. Most days, I love my job at the county. This is his quote. I believe that the citizens of Washington County are well served by the people that work at the county. I believe that no matter how big our county gets, we should never forget our rural roots. County officials should be open and available to taxpayers. Okay, so we'll start out with Susan. And then
I'm
we'll
gonna start.
follow. Oh, I'm sorry. You have a plan. Okay. We'll hear from Kim and Susan.
Okay.
I'm going to say what I want to say, and then Susan can correct all the things that are kind of fouled up here. I'm going to talk to you briefly about kind of how we got to where we are with elections in Washington County. Susan's going to talk a bit about the process that we go through now. And we've got a couple of people here in the congregation that can get after her if she tells a story about that. So a couple of people helped us with our election significantly this past November, and we're grateful for them, for Jackie and Miriam. You'll probably all remember the Bush-Gore election fiasco in the year 2000. That went on for 35 or 36 days after Election Day until the Supreme Court finally ruled, and Bush won Florida by 536 votes or whatever that was. And so shortly after that, the federal government decided to allocate money for all across the country to get electronic voting machines. They were kind of tired, I think, of I don't know if they were pregnant chads or hanging chads or whatever those chads were. And so in the early 2000s, Washington County got approximately 360 or so of you remember the old electronic voting machines. And we had those through about, the state had them through about the mid-teens, 2015 or 16 or so. But they had reached the end of their life, and the manufacturers no longer would provide, support for those. And so the state, under the direction of the Lieutenant Governor's office, who was the chief election officer in the state, they went through a process to find a new vendor for voting equipment. Had a a focus group kind of get together and go through the RFP process and select a vendor. And that vendor was, for most counties, was ES&S, Election Systems and Solutions, something like that, that's what it stands for. And nearly all the counties in Utah elected kind of at that time to go vote by mail. Now, there's a couple of exceptions to that. Beaver County kind of went off on their own earlier and did kind of their own equipment. And Salt Lake County always goes off on their own and does things their own way. I believe they use Dominion equipment software, but the rest of the counties, and I think San Juan County maybe doesn't do vote by mail. They have trouble with mail delivery on the reservation, and so they don't do by mail. I believe that's the case anyway. So a number of counties got into the vote by mail kind of early on, 2013, 14, 15. We were a bit slower. We drug our feet a bit. We were hoping that all the bugs could get worked out of vote by mail before we kind of jumped into that. But we also knew that the 2020 presidential election was looming and maybe lurking. I'm not sure what the right term is to be quite ominous, enough about that. But we decided that between the primary election of 2018 and the general election of 2018, that we would make that leap of faith into vote by mail. We were the 26th or 7th county in Utah to go vote by mail. So we were at the end of the kind of the string on making that conversion. So we've done the general election in 2018 on vote by mail. We did the two municipal elections in 2019 vote by mail, and then there were 3 elections in 2020. It seemed like we were working on voting all the time in 2020, with the presidential primary in March and the regular election on June 30th, the primary, and then the general election on November 3rd. And then to kind of complicate matters with that, we had a bit of the virus that the legislature met a time or two and changed the rules for the primary election. There was no in-person voting. A lot of things were a bit different, and then it kind of went back to a bit more normal for the general election. So that's probably kind of all the background I'll give to you, unless you have questions about that. But please.
Is Washington County the EPS system, or you didn't actually say what our system was?
You mean like for vote by mail? So we have a number of drop boxes. I think Susan will probably talk about this a bit more, but we have a number of drop boxes throughout the county where people can go drop their ballot, or they can mail it. We get them the same. And historically, we've had a bit of trouble with the post office, but I'll just tell you, the November election, they were super about their delivery times and how prompt they were and how consistent they were in getting ballots to us. Does that answer your question?
No.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
That was okay. No, it was what system, like you said, Salt Lake County did Dominion.
So ES&S, all the rest of the counties besides Beaver and Salt Lake is called ES&S, Elections, Solutions and Software, or Software and Solutions, or something like that.
I just didn't catch that.
Oh, sorry about that.
Us also.
They're kind of based, I think, in Nebraska actually, is where they're in the Midwest someplace. So if there's more questions, kind of like the background, I want to just give you a few numbers here. Please. You can't ask any questions because you've already asked me to speak to you later.
I will.
Okay.
I'm curious, when it was decided to go to vote by mail, was that a decision that the county clerk makes, or is it the commissioners? That?
So we had to, at some point, if we're going to go one way or the other, we had to select equipment because it was different. And my recommendation to the commission was that we went to vote by mail, and they approved of that, and then we got the equipment. So it was a recommendation from my office to the commission. Please.
So what was the purpose of the vote by mail?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One of them, we didn't think we could afford to replace the 360 machines that we would have to replace that we had already, and that was an insufficient number. A number of the outlying communities, Enterprise, New Harmony, Virgin, Springdale, Apple Valley. We had, over the course of time, we used to take machines out there for them. But as the core of population from Laverne, Hurricane, Washington, St. George, Santa Clara, Ivins grew, we ended up needing all that equipment kind of in that corridor. And so over the course of time, a lot of the outlying communities became, at the time, were called permanent absentees, but it was really vote by mail. So they were vote by mail for a number of years. So we had quite a few. As much as 30% of the county was voting by mail prior to us going vote by mail. So, and then the other reason was it increased voter turnout. And that was we thought that was a good thing. To give you an example, some of the municipal primaries, even in St. George, were lower than 10% turnout. And they're not great now. I mean, they're up, but they're in the 30 and 40% range. So 4 times, more. And so that, we thought that was a good, we kind of noticed that when some of the communities were kind of forced into going to permanent absentee, we seen their turnout go up when they did that. So we can always look back and say, well, maybe we shouldn't have done that, whatever. But that was the choice at the time, and we think it's a good secure system. I'm just going to give you a couple of numbers here, please.
So just, Leeds was one of the outliers, and we saw a huge increase in the voter participation the very first time. And I think it was the year I was mayor there, that we saved $2,500 in election costs by going with vote by mail.
Yeah. I'll just tell you, most times when we're invited to talk about elections, it's relatively a hostile crowd. So I'm not sure. You're welcome to be hostile as well if you want. So I'm going to give you a few questions that I get asked. That people are worried that, here we are in Washington County, and we're kind of secluded here, and we kind of have been a pretty red county and a pretty red state, and all these people are moving in here, and now we're going to turn purple, we're going to turn blue, and we're going to do all these things. Now, because Cheryl invited me to talk, I picked a candidate at random to just check on, but it happened to be Lowry. But I so in 2014, Lowry ran for the State House, and of 9,544 votes that were cast, he got 75% of those votes. Now remember those two numbers, 75% and 9,500 voters. Now in 2020, he got 73% of 24,803 voters. So I don't think it's very purple, but in general, Republican candidates, depending on what the year is and who their opponent might be, if there is an opponent, Republican candidates typically get between 72, 73, and 78 or 9% of the votes. And that's just typical. And there's some variations of that, but they all kind of fall in there. Now, I'm going to give you an idea of kind of how the spread is on registered voters. So this is just prior to Election Day. On 10/22, there were 99,688 active registered voters in Washington County. Now we had another 1,000 that registered between 10/22. Most of that was at the polls, but we had just barely over 100,000 on Election Day. And these numbers haven't changed much percentage-wise. Of the 100% of those voters, a little over 63% are registered Republicans. A little over 20% are unaffiliated voters. Just over 10% are Democratic voters. And the remainder are made up of the Green Party, the Constitution Party, American Independent. And those numbers, those percent, 63, 20, and 10, they just haven't changed very much over the course of all these people moving into our neck of the woods. So we did see there was 10,000 more registered voters on the November election day than there was on the primary election day on June 30th, which is just like 4 months later. So it goes to show you what a good hatred for people can do. It really brings people out of the woodwork to register to vote, whatever side they're on. It really kind of brings them out. So that's probably more than you want to know about all that. I will say this: there's an article in this is called I really don't know much about them. Sightline Institute gave 4 states A grades for handling vote by mail: Colorado, Oregon, Utah, and Washington. So I believe, and Susan will talk more about the process, but I believe that Utah is the gold standard for vote by mail. Yeah. Susan, tell them how it works.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so hopefully you can all hear me. So we have a kind of a long process that it goes through, but I want to start with when people registered as candidates. Now we've got to put together a ballot for them to put on, right? So who can tell me how we decide what order people get on the ballot? Okay, that's what you would think, and you're almost right. You're kind of right. What happens is the Lieutenant Governor's office takes the alphabet and randomizes it. Changes the order so that there's not always a person that's at the top. There's some kind of science that says that if you're at the first place that you would get more votes. So I just wanted to make you aware of that because as we were doing a ballot in November, we had this flyer that shows up in our office and on the bulletin board and in the Dropbox kind of stuff. And this person is really concerned that we have done something wrong. It says, Washington County official ballot manipulation, trying to keep voters from Trump. Who decided to put Trump's name at the bottom of the ballot? 9 places below all the other candidates, most of whom nobody's ever heard of before. How do we know that these same anti-Trump people are going to count Trump votes honestly? The answer is we don't. This is a clear case of anti-Trump bias inside of the county clerk's office. This must be investigated now.
What else does it say?
County Clerk Kim M. Hafen must answer for this. Now, when we got this, we wished we had a phone number or email or a name that we could have contacted and said, I am so sorry that you don't understand how it goes. But that is clearly, we did not do that. And I'm sorry you get bad press for stuff like that. That's kind of.
All those ballots were the same throughout the state.
Through the state of Utah.
At least on the federal and state races, the county races, they still have used the same randomizer. Of course, the names are different.
Do the other states do that too?
I don't know.
It's a state law. I think it's a decent law. Makes sense, right? You don't want anybody to call foul play. So if it's random.
They do that even when it's not a national election.
Yeah.
So they'll establish the ballot order for the municipal races as well. So we don't really have any part to play in that.
Commissioner.
And I took some guff when I ran for city council because the same randomization was occurring, but it happened that year that my being an A happened to be at the top. And everyone said the same thing, that I had gone in there and forced me at the top. And
So is it a mechanical random, or is it a hand-picked random?
I don't know. I'm not involved in it. We just get, I can show you what the alphabet is, but we just get this printout from the Lieutenant Governor's office saying, here's the alphabet for this next couple of years. We have the same alphabet that we had for 2020 for 2021. So it's still going to be all mixed up and weird. Did you have a hand raised? Yes. Oh.
When you ask questions or make comments, if you use the microphone, our virtual attendees can hear you too. Okay, my question is just, is the randomized order determined before they even know who the candidates are going to be?
I think it's done right at the beginning of the election season.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think they even have to file even because the randomization is going to be the same no matter who files.
Who runs?
This is what I would have thought though. If I was lieutenant governor and I wanted to think that it wasn't very good to have the T on number 26, that maybe they should have reshuffled and tried it again because I got a little bit of flack over it. But I'm just kidding about that. But T was number 26, so there wasn't somebody after him, and we didn't have that name. T was number 26.
Okay, so we get the ballots prepared, right? And we get them printed. And then first of all, we need them to come to us so that we can test our equipment. So we want to see what the ballot is going to look like, what races are in there. We test all of those races. When it's a precinct type situation, we have to test each of the precincts to make sure that our election equipment is going to count things correctly, that it's going to work the way we expect it to work. We're going to take some ballots and we're going to mark some, and we know how many we voted for Spencer Cox, and we know how many we voted for Gray Hughes, and we know how many we voted for John Huntsman, and we run it through the machine and we see if that's the answer. And that's how we feel some confidence in our equipment. And after that's all done, and we've done this logic and accuracy testing and all of this kind of thing, then the ballots are ready to be shipped out. So the printed ballots come onto your door, right? What we're hoping is that you'll get that yellow envelope and you'll be excited to vote. And you'll open up and you'll read the instructions. And we want you to read the instructions because it'll tell you that, it'll work a lot better if you use a black or blue pen. And if you use a pink pen, it's not going to read really good. And it gives you some tips, on how to vote. And then what we really want you to do, and this is why I like vote by mail, is we want you to look at your ballot. And if there's referendums or if there's constitutional amendments or if there's people that you don't know on that ballot, we want you to sit down at your kitchen table and look online and read and become an educated voter. And that to me is what the benefit is of vote by mail, is you have some time to study things with the ballot in front of you to know what to study. Sorry, yeah.
Okay, so I've only been in Utah.
There you go.
I've only been in Utah 2 years, and I've experienced elections in both California and Colorado.
I'm sorry.
That's why I left. One of the problems I have is I'm computer literate. A lot of people are not. And so it's not easy for them to be able to research. And I think here you used to get a package that would go through and take the women voters in California used to do it where it would be sent to you along with the ballot. Because we've got a sample ballot, information on the different, pros and cons of this proposition or, whatever. And because there are a lot of people, especially here in southern Utah, that are not on the computer. So they don't get that information.
Well, and that, I can see your argument, but it is still available to you. Their information is out there, whether you need to go to a library and get some help or come to our office and have us help you pull it up. I do know that part of the reason they don't want to send out informational things is it doesn't update quickly. Once it's sent, you can't change if there was something wrong, and it's very expensive to include that. We're trying to keep, costs low, fearful that way. Anyway,
just for information, ballots can't mail until 3 weeks prior to election.
That was going to be my next question for
sorry.
them. Now we gave you the answer I want to ask you. It's good. It's good. Because, so this was one of those things we got a call from now. Was it the lady in Vermont or was she in Wisconsin? I don't know. She called. She was really upset because her mother, who lives in St. George, hadn't got her ballot yet. And we said, wow.
But she had.
We'd be concerned
Yeah.
if your mother had got her ballot because we haven't sent them yet. There's a certain time frame that we send them out, and it's not till the 21 days. And when they go out, that's kind of starts our counting or processing of ballots. Okay, so it's going to hit your mailbox. Like I said, we're going to ask you to sit down and look at stuff, and you're going to get the ballot, and you're going to hopefully fill in the ovals and do what it tells you to do. And stick it in an envelope and sign it. Ask you to sign
envelope,
it.
not the ballot.
Please sign your envelope. That's the first thing that we're going to look for. And you're going to drop it in a Dropbox, or you're going to do whatever you want to get it back to us. Bring it to us.
And it doesn't make one bit of difference how dark you fill the oval in, or you make it really, really, really big, or you give us commentary. We're just going to count the votes.
So the first thing we do in the morning is we go around to all the drop boxes and pick up all the ballots. Okay? Had somebody call me from Hurricane and said, when's the next time you're coming out to Hurricane? Because I don't want my ballot sitting in that box for a week or two. I said, every day in the morning, drop it off. I'll be there between 7 and 7:30. I'll pick it up. Oh, and not just me. It's me and someone. There's two. We have teams that do everything just as a security thing. I don't not trust anybody in my office. I definitely know I do trust myself. I'm not going to do anything with the ballots. But for you guys to know, there's two of us. Okay.
So ballots mailed on Tuesday, October 13th, and we started to pick them up on Monday, October 19th. So we gave a time to get to people's homes. And once they started showing up in people's mailboxes, we started to gather.
Open up the box and make it drop off the box. So we get into the office and we'll go in Kim's office and we'll start pulling the tabs. We got to pull the privacy tabs first so that we can see the signatures, if the signatures are there or not. If the signatures are there, which is what we hope, we're going to move on to the next process. If they're not, we're going to kick them out. And when I say kick them out, I mean we've got to contact that voter and say, hey, we got your ballot and thank you. We want to count your ballot, but until you come and sign, we can't count your ballot. And so we invite them to come back in. We take our ballots that did have signatures and we move them forward into counts of 50. We batch them up in counts of 50.
And that's just for us.
That's so that we can kind of audit and keep track of how many ballots we have going through the process, right? So we take 50 and we go to this. Oh, am I supposed to use that? I'm sorry. I'm not being loud enough. So we have this big machine that's called, nope, it's not even working. Okay, the MVB, which is the mail ballot verification machine. It's kind of big. When we send the batch through, the first thing it does is take a picture of that envelope. The second thing it does is it stamps a number. So yes, you're in a batch, but now you're a number in the batch. You're number 1 or 5 or 27, right? And then it moves on and it compares the signature to what we have on file. And we might have just your voter registration on file, or we might have a voter registration, a confirmation card, and an affidavit. We might have several signatures on file. It's going to compare, and if things are good, it's going to move on forward so that it can go on to the next process. But if it's not, it's going to kick it out. Another way that it kicks out. So why would it kick out besides the signature didn't match? What?
So you can verify it.
So we've moved it forward to, yes, let's say out of this batch of 50, 48 of them went forward and 2 kicked out. And they kicked out for various reasons. Like I said, maybe it's because the signature didn't match, but maybe this is a voter that we ask for ID. We asked them to provide our ID and proof of residency, and they didn't include it. We don't have that in our system. We're not going to process the ballot till we get it. So we kick it out, and we have to give them a call or send them an email. We call it a cure letter. We ask them to cure the deficiency for us to be able to count them as an active registered voter. Does that make sense? Okay, so there's things so we have those that kind of go through a different process because they got to be hand processed. But our 48 that were good, we have a printer that prints off a list. So now we have their ballot number and their name and the fact that it was all good, and we move it on to humans. So we send it through the machine first, but that same batch now goes to a team that are sitting at laptop computers. And these teams have information that comes straight from that batch. A random sampling of the batch goes to the computer. 15 to 20 out of that 50 is going to now have eyeballs look at it. And
Just for the fun of it.
just for us to have security.
Just so the machine's not making all the decisions.
Yeah. And so these teams also have at the laptops all of the information that we have on hand, all of the signatures we have on file. Okay. So they're going to go through them, and sometimes all of them will proceed to the next step, and sometimes they're going to go like, oh, I don't like that one. And they're going to kick one out too, because people can do that as well. So that's another people that we're going to turn around and call at the end of the day. So now we've dropped down to we've got 47, and this paperwork follows the batch. So now we know we're at 47. We take it to the next step, and I forgot to tell you that what we do each time is count the ballots. We want to know that we've got the right number, right? So we started at 50, 48, now we're at 47. So we send it to the splitter table, and the first thing that Kim's going to split them open and turn them down upside down so that we don't see any signatures. And the poll workers that are sitting around that table, they're going to count. The first thing they're going to do is count and make sure they've got 47, because that's what they were supposed to be given. What happens if it doesn't have 47? Well, it kind of, stop. Whose initials are on there? Oh, it's Jackie. Sorry. No, they're going to ask, okay, so, hey, what happened here? And they're going to go back to the box and look and say, oh, whoops, sorry, I did take one out. Let me fix it. And they're going to reinitial that they did pull one out. So we keep an accurate count the whole way through. Okay, so finally now your ballot gets to come out of the envelope. Okay, it's taken that long and that many processes to get there. We separate the ballots out all nice and flat. We band them together to go to the counting system, and the envelopes kind of get a elastic band and they get to go to storage. And we know we're gonna have to look at them again, so we gotta kind of note which day they came in and all that kind of stuff, but they're going away. These ones are done. They have been proven to be active valid voters. Does that make sense? Okay, so then we take ballots. And we go to this counting machine, and it goes in and it goes around kind of a high-speed scanner, and it scans both sides of the ballots, sends that image to desktops that are sitting right there kind of next to the counting machine. And
They're
it gives us.
They're not hooked to the internet.
No, they're just hooked to that machine. So those only things that it's going to get scanned. And then that machine's going to give us kickouts as well, but it's going to give us reports, okay? So the reports are going to tell us things that it saw or that it was concerned about. So it'll say like an unclear mark, or it'll say an undervote, or it'll say an overvote. And so these are ballots then that we have to call adjudicate. So we have a team of people go sit in front of that desktop computer, pull up the ballot, and see what it is that the real ballot says. So, for instance, Kim will be sitting there and he'll say, there's an unclear mark for Kanye West. And we'll pull up the ballot and look, and nope, that's where the fold was for the ballot. There was no vote. The machine didn't count any vote, but it just saw something. So it wanted a pair of eyes to verify, okay? So we had a whole, Kanye West was on the fold. We had a whole lot of unclear ballots. None of them counted.
Not many votes, but a lot of them to check.
A lot of them we looked at, but just to verify. So undervotes. An undervote means that they have a race that there was no vote for. Well, we're okay with that, okay? In the state of Utah, we don't care if all you wanted to do is vote for president. We'll count that vote, and all the other ones, it's okay. But the computer's concerned that maybe something got missed, so they ask us to look for it. So again, instead of eyeballs go on there and we look and say, yep, they didn't vote for any judges. Okay, and that's okay. It's just another check, another security. Overvotes. An overvote is where you have one race, that they've colored in more than one oval. Now, I'm not sure why they would do that. Maybe they like Huntsman and Spencer Cox and they think, oh, okay, yeah, we'll give them both vote. That doesn't really work for us. Kim would say that's a no-go. We don't count either of them. If they overvote, that is unfortunate. That doesn't count. Okay.
I'll just add one thing there. When you vote for somebody on there, you don't need to write their name in on the write-in line. We had a lot of that. And essentially, if we didn't look at those, that vote wouldn't count because it'd be an overvote. So in the adjudication process, we kind of take off the mark for the write-in when it's the same name as they voted for with the oval. We're trying to judge voter intent the best we can.
So if we can clearly tell who they meant to vote for, we're going to give them that, click. But yeah, we had several of those too. So let's see. So now when we get through all that adjudication, we finally can commit results. And when we commit results, people will say, oh, so who's winning? Well, that's not what we do with commit results. We commit the number of ballots that we have processed that day. And we know that we started out with, let's say, 6,000 ballots at the day to process. We get to that point, and we know that we kicked out, I'm going to do easy math, 500. So at the end of the day, when we commit results, it should be 5,500 votes counted. And Kim's taught us, we got to expect a number. Be ready to know what that's going to tell you so that you know if you're balanced and you're good or not. Kind of helps to deal with numbers in this kind of business. Okay, so that's kind of the whole process for the election. A couple other things that I want you to know about, just because I think it will, to me, it made more sense and it made me feel a little bit more comfortable. I don't know. When you said restore confidence, I was like, oh, that's a lot of pressure. I don't know that I can do that. But I can tell you some things that helped me to feel better about the election. First, when somebody, I'll give you an example. There was a person who left and went on a mission. They didn't ever go in and change their voter registration. So they got a ballot here to their local address in St. George. But then they were upset because they're off in, I don't remember, Illinois, Indiana, somewhere like that. And they called and said, we didn't get our ballot. Well, we don't forward ballots, ever. Okay, we asked for them to come back to our office so that nobody can accidentally get a forwarded ballot. I think that's a security thing. You can see how that's a good deal. But so they didn't get their ballot in Indiana. Big surprise. So what we had to do is go in the computer to their voter registration, spoil that ballot that we had issued to them, and give them a replacement ballot that we sent out to Indiana so that they could vote. Now, what happens if maybe somebody picks up their mail and sent them their ballot? So now they have two. Well, we've got to know that when it comes through the MVB, it's going to kick it out. It does not allow two votes for that person, that voter. They only have one ballot issued. Yes, we spoiled the one. Now that one's going to come out as a void. It's going to kick it out. So that gave me some confidence. That made me feel a little better about things. The other thing that made me feel better is after the election was over and we'd given all the results and everybody was good, the lieutenant governor calls us up and says, oh, hey, we want you to audit the election. And they gave us a bunch of lists of batches that we had to go back through and look at the signatures again on the envelopes. Like I said, we had to go be able to find them and pull them again and redo the envelopes, and also batches of ballots. And so we'd sit there and Kim would have the actual piece of paper in his hand and I'd have the screen up and we would compare. Okay, it said that they gave a vote to Trump. Yep, the computer gave a vote to Trump. So we had, again, another verification. Just like we tested in the beginning, this is kind of like at the end we're auditing and testing again that it really did happen how it was supposed to happen.
Is that all the ballots, or said just certain batches?
They just did a random sampling of batches,
Based on how
a
many
certain
ballots are
percentage.
cast, they send us back the number of envelope and ballot batches to check, and what number of they get assigned a batch number when they go through the signature verifier. So we have a batch number, we send those off. They send back a list of, based on how many voters we have, how many batches we need to check.
So no, it's not all of them. That would take us days, but it's even if not, I bet it still took us a whole day to go through and do the audit. I mean, there were still a lot of ballots. So I'm
I
sorry.
was just wondering how you keep track of who's passed away or who's moved permanently, and you have no idea they've moved permanently.
Okay, so for the move ones, it's going to again come back to us. The post office, we pay extra postage for it to not be forwarded. So it's going to come back to us. And when we get it, we're going to check in that ballot. We try to track all of them, right? So we're going to check in that ballot, and it's going to have one of the choices be moved out of county. Because even if they move to Iron County, we're still not going to send them another ballot because we're Washington County, right? We don't I don't want to say we don't care that they moved to Iron County, but we're not going to help them vote in Iron County. So they're not going to get that. Now, for the death ones, we do go through, and the lieutenant governor does update the voter records based on obituaries or on what's the vital statistics, vital records. But what if somebody just died 2 days before the election? They might have a ballot out there. I'm not sure how that's signed and how we can verify.
We might count it.
But you know what I'm saying? I mean, we do watch that stuff and update on a regular basis, just like we update with the post office, their national whatever registry, to update addresses on a regular basis.
The first few days after we mail ballots out, we get more return mail than we get voted ballots for the first few days because they couldn't be delivered. Because even in St. George or Washington County, somebody like Eric might move from Santa Clara to Little Valley or whatever, and they won't forward that. And they can't forward it because elections are precinct special, and it's not the same candidates that he would vote for in Santa Clara they might vote for out in Little Valley.
Okay. So anyway, that's the whole process. I'm going to let Kim come back up here so he can answer the questions.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, but I do want to say a couple of things. Okay. Our time's probably up. I don't know.
You have 12 minutes.
Oh, 12 minutes.
And I think you've got
we may have to have something more intelligent to say. It's going to take 12 minutes. So one of the things that worries people is that how come all these votes are counted after Election Day? It's like people are out there discovering votes and bringing in baskets of votes to count after Election Day is over. And, that's going to sway the election. Well, I'll just let you know, when we were on electronic machines, the results on election night weren't more accurate, but they were more complete. So Susan said we pick up votes every morning. We started the 19th. We went through Election day is the 3rd, and on election day, we actually picked up like at 7:30 in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because people are dropping a lot of ballots on election day. But after we picked up at 3 o'clock, we didn't go back and pick up again that day. But what we did do is we went back at 8 o'clock and locked the boxes. So just like a polling location closing, we went back and locked the boxes. There's a lid on the box inside that, so if somebody kind of sneaks it through there, it doesn't fall into the ballots that we're going to count. So on the day after the election, on Wednesday, we go back to the same process. The two people go back out, gather the ballots that were in the drop boxes that were dropped from 3 o'clock on till 8 o'clock, and we count those on Wednesday. So depending on how people vote, the more they push that to the afternoon of election day, the less complete the election results will be on election night, because we just haven't counted those. It's, like Susan says, it's a process. It's not like, well, let's go grab those right quick and put those in the count. There's a bit of a process that has to go to do that. So we counted about 10,000 ballots. We counted 91,000 ballots in total for the election. It was 91% turnout, but 10,000 of those ballots were counted after election night. And about 7,000 of those were ballots that were dropped in the drop boxes between 3 o'clock on Tuesday and 8 o'clock on Tuesday. Okay, so I'll quit for a minute. Okay, please.
Yes, you mentioned that there's 4 states that received an A grade in voting, and we know.
Vote by mail, yeah.
Well, okay, but we know there were a lot of issues this election. Is there any initiative going on that will allow other states to take back best practices from, like, let's say Utah, so that the rest of the country has faith in their voting process?
I don't know that there is, but it's certainly a good idea. You know, for instance, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled in Pennsylvania that the vote people could not verify signatures. It's like, okay, that must sound like a good idea to somebody, but I don't know. So we hope that where there's good ideas, that those are being passed around to others. But I really don't know if that's in the works or not. Hopefully, please.
Okay, I'll be honest up front. I am not for mass mail ballots.
Okay.
Okay. That being said, maybe what we could do is change some dates. Now, election day is a certain date. Why can't you stop mail-in ballots that they must be received a couple days ahead of election day? And if you want to vote after that, then you go in and do it in person. Why can't we put in some more restrictions so that election day is election day?
Well, so I would say that you would need to visit with our legislators.
Okay.
I can't do anything. We follow election law, and that's passed by the state. That's why we can't say that. You know, one of the biggest things we deal with is when a ballot has to be postmarked. Right now, it has to be postmarked the day before election day. For the June primary, they changed that to election day. For the November election, it was changed back to the day before election day. Even some consistency there would help, because people don't really understand, well, why can't I mail this on election day? And I think one of the reasons is there are some post offices that are open past 8 o'clock in the big cities. And so that polling location isn't really closed at 8. And I think that's one of the reasons that they want to postmark prior to election day. And I think they visited with some of those post offices in June and had them close at 8 so they could postmark that on election day. And one of the issues that we deal with here is a lot of our mail goes from here to Provo, it gets processed, it gets postmarked, and is sent back to us. So if you take your ballot to the post office, say at 5 o'clock on Monday before the election, there's a good possibility it won't get postmarked till the next day. And if it does, we ain't going to count it. Even though you mailed it the day before, we have to have a clear postmark prior to election day to count. And the post office helped us a bit with this election because they held some of those and didn't send them to Provo to process. And so that helped us a bit. But in general, your mail goes up and comes back. You know, one day we didn't get any, we got like, how many ballots one day? Like 5 ballots. You know, we're in the middle of election. In the mail, we got like 5 ballots. So we constantly, we didn't get ballots. There's no way. That's all we got. Typically, the answer is that's all we got. But this time, they said, our processing machine broke down in Provo. They had to go to Salt Lake to get processed. And so we didn't get those back. So the next day we got a double barrel. But it goes out of here and comes back. So that's a bit of an issue with results on election night. But I'll just say this. No matter how many votes we count after election night, it doesn't change the percentages of who got votes by one bit.
And I want to say one thing. Kim liked to always say this to us. He says, we can't count them till we get them.
Yeah, people
Right?
say, why is there so many?
When they're hanging on to their ballots for days and days or weeks and weeks, that affects a lot what our end result is.
Just so you know,
election day.
every day, starting with the 19th of October, not counting weekends, although we picked some up on the weekends and did some processing, we process ballots every day from the 19th of October through the 4th of November. And every day when we went home, we didn't have any ballots unprocessed. There wasn't like ballots, well, we'll leave these for tomorrow. We'll finish these in the morning. We stayed until whatever it took to get those done. We did, I don't know, 6,000 or 7,000 ballots a day. I don't know, something like that. Commissioner? I have to call on him. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know about anybody else, but outside of Washington County, I don't have any confidence in any election office anywhere in the entire nation. So
I do in all of Utah. I'll just say that. I know every county clerk.
and so I'll extend on Kim's good referral that to Utah, maybe without some big giant area up north. Anyway, so intentionally I observed, and Nicole, our county administrator, also observed. We kind of became volunteer observers onto what Clerk and Susan and all the volunteers, thank heavens for them, were doing. And I was amazed. And when it was all over, I said, okay, everyone's had their ballot counted, and just their ballot for one person, right? Not like rumors anywhere else, which probably are reality. But then there was one separate incident, and I needed Kim for something else. And this is after the election, by a couple days. And I said, where's Kim? And he's over at the election office. And I said,
I was over there rigging the election.
and I said, where's Kim? And he's over there. And so I went over there. And he had 6 ballots, was it about?
Yeah.
And there was, why didn't say what was unique about those 6, but he was tracking down the last moment or the last ballot that make sure it was counted and properly counted.
So I'm going to tell you kind of how that came about. The Lieutenant Governor, the website, you can go on to vote.utah.gov, and if you vote by mail, you can kind of track your ballot. So once we get it back, when we mail them on the 13th, it'll say mailed October 13th. You go in there and check it. Then when we run it through the signature verifier, it'll say that the county has received it. And then on election night, it will change to counted. There were times when the signature verifier didn't always talk to vote.utah.gov. And so Susan and her husband would cast their ballot at the Hurricane Library on the same day. And then a couple days later, Susan's ballot would show that it had been received by the county, but her husband's didn't. And so the calls were, what the hell's going on? We dropped these the same day, same time, same everything. Hers has been received, mine hasn't. And so I don't know how many we had in total, but my feeling was that if we got your envelope, we counted your ballot. Because once we've separated ballots from envelopes, we can't go back and say, we got Miriam's ballot here. We can look at it and see who she voted for. There's no way we can do that. They're separated. But if we have the envelope, I will guarantee you with my life that we counted your ballot. So when the commissioner was hunting for me, we had some people that the website wasn't updated for them. So we knew that Susan's ballot was counted on October 29th. So I went to the bins that surrounded the 29th and the 30th and the 28th, thinking that the envelopes should be somewhere close together because they went in the bin the same time. So I went through the batches of 50. Kevin Lewis. I've got your envelope. And it was like a hallelujah moment. But I did that on I don't know how many altogether. There was quite a few. And it got, even after the election was over, it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then I'd get a call and say, this doesn't show mine was counted. And so I said, shit, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back and find these envelopes. And I went back and found, not just me, but the thing of it is I can't do very many things, but I can look through envelopes. So it ended up being me going over there. But we found every person that asked us that said they didn't get updated, we found their envelope. Every one. And my opinion is still, and we'll have doubters and people, if we got it, it was counted. So anyway, that's kind of the end for me. So if you have any questions,
Well, let's give Kim and Susan one last thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today. Remember, March 4th will be our next event. It will be a growth forum. We've got some great guests coming to that. And we are sponsoring the Children's Justice Center for the rest of this year until November. So next month, we are asking, if you can, to bring with you a package of small snack-sized chips or cookies or crackers, snack bags, to donate to the Children's Justice Center. They use those there for kids who come in and need help. So, okay, thanks one more time.